Welcome to another episode of Old Mutuals on the Money. Today we've got an interesting guest, very much known in TikTok. I mean, some people call her TikTok entrepreneur, whatever they call her, she's a businesswoman. What I like about her is that she's not scared to face up her failure, and she believes that she can help people by sharing some of her own experiences. Very rare quality from a lot of business people or people who see themselves as celebrities who don't want to give us the truth about what went down behind the scenes. I think we have a lot to learn today. So today we're joined by Lady Q. So she's going to tell us more about herself. And welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I always want to start from the top, so we can look at what a person is doing now, but it's important to know where you come from,
Yes.
Your upbringing. Ubuyapi.
So I'm originally from KZN.
All right.
And I actually grew up in an orphanage because I lost both my parents when I was newborn. So
Wow.
yeah, it was myself and my sister. We grew up in an orphanage.
Okay.
For me, I was very aware of how I was actually starting off on the back foot. But I really, really wanted success. So I worked really hard. I always stayed focused. I never really got involved in things that children typically get involved in. Like teenagers, they might start drinking or hanging out with boys. For me, I didn't really do that because I knew that there's no backup plan. I'm my own backup plan. So I stayed focused. I knew what I wanted to do in life, which was to be an entrepreneur. And when I left the orphanage at 18, I was given a scholarship to go study in Cape Town.
Okay.
So I studied interior design for 4 years and then moved up to Joburg around COVID time.
Yeah.
I was working for a small design company which had to shut down because of COVID. Shortly after that, I started my own businesses out of desperation.
Yeah.
And then since then, it's just been taking off. I've tried many businesses, which we'll get into a bit later. But yeah, I've just always been very entrepreneurial because of that goal in mind and knowing very well that no one's going to help me get there other than myself.
I think that's so humbling to hear somebody share that, with that background, growing up from an orphanage, but to have the kind of mindset of being a go-getter. You could have chosen to lament about, your background, why this, why that, but you chose to look at life positively.
Yes.
So you're a qualified interior designer.
Correct.
What sparked your interest in starting a business in Airbnb?
Desperation. It was not planned.
Yeah.
When the first business that I started after COVID hit and I lost my job was actually in fashion. Because one thing I did throughout college was I bought myself a sewing machine. I learned how to sew from YouTube. And then I was selling little things that I'd made to my classmates and people at church. And that then grew into me having a small CMT business where I was doing white labeling. So for example, if you wanted to make these shirts, and so we would manufacture them and then we put your label in it and sell those to you in bulk. So we were doing that. It was going really well. I had a small studio, I had staff, and then things went downhill from there. So shortly after that, I was homeless. I was broke. And then someone that I knew from the orphanage helped me get a place. Now that place that I got was in Randburg. And it just happened to have, you see those floor to ceiling windows, very penthousey. And I guess because I had studied interior design, I was able to furnish it nicely using the money that I was getting from a site, like a piece job that I had. And someone came over one day and made a comment about how, this place is so beautiful actually. It's it reminds me of an Airbnb.
Yeah.
And then that's where the idea sparked. So I had always known about the Airbnb as Airbnb as a concept, but I never considered doing it because I didn't own the property.
Yeah.
But I don't know, at that moment I just thought, hey man, maybe if they give me permission to do this, even though I don't own, I'm just renting, they might say yes, and they did.
Wow.
So
they agreed. So the landlord agreed for you to register the apartment on Airbnb, even though you are not owning it.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's a concept that we call rental arbitrage. So I'm renting from you. Let's say you're my landlord and you've given me permission to do this. So my obligation, is it an obligation?
Yeah.
Like commitment. Exactly,
anyway.
I have to pay you that rent, whatever the rent is. Let's say you say it's 8,000. I pay you 8,000. My goal is to make sure that I get bookings throughout the month that are more than the 8,000. Let's say 15.
Yes.
So then I can pay you your 8 and then I keep 7.
Right.
That's how it worked.
Goodness. For somebody to just think like that, it's amazing, eh? Was there a similar concept elsewhere, or
I
that?
believe that there was something, and hence I found what the name was. But at the time, I had just thought, I mean, let me just see what they say, and
Yeah.
they happened to say yes.
Okay, I think I heard that at some point you were doing classes on TikTok, going live, and you
Yes.
were mentoring people on how to
Yes.
start this Airbnb. How did that come about?
All right, so after I got my first Airbnb, the one I was living in,
Yes.
I went on a date.
Okay.
Went on a date.
Yeah.
And then I met someone who had a bunch of properties, and when you have that conversation of, oh, what do you do, blah blah blah, the properties came up, and then I mentioned, oh, actually I do Airbnb, so he gave those properties to me to manage for him. So now that's a second way to do it without owning properties.
Okay.
So one, the rental arbitrage, and then this one is what we call co-hosting, where I'm basically managing.
Co-hosting.
Co-hosting.
All right. Siyafunda namhlanje. Okay.
So that's where I'm basically managing all of your properties for
Right.
you, and then I get a commission from all of the bookings that I bring in during that month. So when I was marketing these places, trying to get guests, people on TikTok are not trying to book the space. They're asking me how
Yeah.
do I do this? How do I do
Because
this?
they want to learn and do it for themselves.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I just started a class. My first class didn't have many people, like maybe 10 or something. And then at some point it just took off, and then everyone was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were these classes free, or you have to pay for them?
No, they were paying, I think, 100 Rand or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were they were happening on a different platform?
They
or?
were on Zoom, online.
On Zoom. Okay. So you recruit from TikTok.
Yes.
And then if a person pays, and then of course you give them
Correct.
the links, and then they go and
Yes.
attend classes there.
Yeah.
And how often were you running these classes?
Once a
in
week.
a month? Once a week.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a nice one. But what I like about you though is that you're very open about some of your business failures. I mean, you made your first million at the age of 25,
25, yeah.
and you lost all of it.
I lost not just the million.
Yeah. How much are we
We
talking
made
about?
the first
Yeah,
million
but
at
even
25.
reducing volume. How much did you lose?
I don't know, but we made
But a couple of millions.
couple million, because we made the first one at 25.
Right.
Of course, we continued making.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it went downhill, and it was going downhill slowly. I could kind of project, I could see it
Yeah.
from a few months back
Okay.
that this ship is sinking.
Yes.
And it took so much to admit that, yes, it is sinking.
It is going down.
Yeah.
So, what brought this failure though?
A couple of bad decisions, and it's insane to me because nothing major happened, but just a whole lot of little things in sequence
Okay.
and continuously happening is what sank the ship. The first one that I did wrong was I have some investors
Right.
who invested, let's say 100,000, and we found a rental arbitrage. Remember I told you what that is, no?
Right.
So we got the agreement with the landlord. We then used their investment to furnish the place,
Right.
and then we run it on the behalf and then split the payment.
Yes.
So obviously that investor is supposed to receive a return every single month.
Yeah.
And it was going fine until now. You know, landlords can be very iffy at times. They just change their mind, or they see that, oh, these people are actually making money. I want to get in on
I want to
this.
do it on my own. and
Exactly.
myself. Oh,
So now they
goodness, yeah.
sabotage.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
when that sabotage happened, what I was meant to do is share the responsibility
Right.
with my investors. Tell
Yes.
them this has happened. We've now lost this unit, but instead. I chose to take on their monthly returns
That's right.
out of my own pocket every
Okay.
single month, and it went on for months and
Okay.
months and months. So I was losing a lot of money there because obviously the space doesn't exist anymore. There were a couple incidences similar to that sort of thing.
Okay.
But ultimately the mistake was me taking that on, the responsibility of
On
it
yourself.
on myself, instead of, getting the investors involved and seeing how can we now fix this and move forward.
Could this have been prevented maybe if there was a legal contract drafted with the landlord?
Oh, there was.
So that they understand that if I withdraw, I have to pay for these changes that, I mean,
There was a contract stating, for example, that they wouldn't be able to just
Okay.
terminate the lease and
Yes.
whatnot.
Did you go to court? I mean,
Yes.
did you have to
So
take
I
each
had-
other to
so
court?
now
and
I had my lawyers involved, and I don't know if maybe I just had the wrong lawyers involved, but my lawyers just had this thing of always writing letters and
Yeah.
more letters and more letters. So we never ended up in a courtroom, but there were
and
just
the
tons
team
of
is
letters.
running with lawyers, and every
Exactly.
time they write a letter,
Each
they
letter is
consult.
for 10,000
Oh
Rand.
goodness, yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
ultimately, it never really went anywhere. There was even one case that we're still figuring out now where the Hawks are involved.
Yeah.
And it still goes nowhere because the lawyers are just writing letters and more letters and more letters, and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. And I think this is the part where a lot of people don't understand that there's no business that doesn't have risks. So even this, there were some risks and the risk materialized. What were your financial lessons that you learned throughout the whole ordeal?
I learned that, like you're saying, any investment is very risky, and sometimes those risks will materialize, and I should not have taken it on myself, the full responsibility of what happened, especially because it was not my fault. It was unforeseen.
How did you manage your stakeholders or your investors, basically? I mean, those who invested money, and how did you manage them?
Well, once I spoke about what had happened, I sent them all emails just letting them know that, okay, so right now what we're doing, well, the returns are on hold until we are able to now find another place and do it correctly, having learned from the mistakes that we made previously. And only once that's all back on track, then we will continue with the investment.
Okay, going back to some of the lessons learned, because obviously somebody who listen to your story and say, actually, I want to try this business, but obviously you need to appreciate the risk in any business, right? So for somebody to say, okay, how can I structure my business or my business model in such a way that I'm able to manage a risk both of the landlords, but also investors who are giving me the money to go and furnish this thing. How would you do it differently if you were to do the same, but to manage that risk so that it doesn't really hit too hard on your pocket?
So on the side of the investors, I think we had a very, very nice JV written up. So that one, I'm protected, they're protected. And the fact that the investment is for life, as long as the Airbnb is still operating, they would receive returns. The great thing about the way that contract was written is that even if right now, what has happened, we have to take a pause on it, it's not going to really affect, there's no limit on the time in which the agreement was supposed to run. So you're like, oh, now if we pause for 6 months, then it's affecting my returns because this agreement was for 5 years. It's just 6 months pause or 3 months pause while we fix this and then we continue. So I think in that case, I would say my advice to anyone who's going to have investors is to get a really, really good lawyer who can think of all the possibilities and then just write it down in a way that's going to protect both parties. So I'm not too worried about that side.
Yeah. Honestly speaking, for me, I think there's a very powerful lesson in what you're sharing that, in whatever business you venture into, understand the risks and mitigate those risks in terms of having the relevant contracts, but have the right lawyers. Because, for somebody who feels hard done by, they can easily accuse you of all sorts of things, but the reality is that it's a business model that comes with its own risks, and you need to get into this business knowing anything can go wrong. But if this happens, I mean, these are the options that we have.
Yes, and we were able to give them options as well, according to the contract or the agreement that we signed, and all of them have chosen to give us time to now put things back into the right place and then continue.
Because one of the things that I noticed, given your business model where you're mentoring people, the very same landlords who come and attend your classes and say, almost, I could make more here. It's the very same people that turn around to say, no, but I think you're making more money than me. And then they decide to change their mind and all that. How do you go about setting up a business like that? I mean, to get into this rentals model without owning the property?
So it was the two ways that I was telling you about, the rental arbitrage and the co-hosting. The co-hosting one is a lot safer, to be honest. It's zero investment, zero risk. It's just managing spaces on behalf of someone else.
Because at least there's an agreement with the landlord there.
And there's also no obligation to have to make a certain amount every single month because your rent is due. Whereas with co-hosting, it's just whatever we make, and
Did you get to a point where you started acquiring your own properties?
No, not yet.
Okay. How do you strike a balance between reinvesting the profits and also taking care of your personal financial needs?
That's where I got it wrong, to be honest. I've got 3 bank accounts. I've got my 2 personal ones and 1 business account. But to be honest, I was never paying myself a salary. I was obviously just moving money wherever I needed to. So I think that really did affect, number one, my, how I look to the banks as well.
Yes.
Because they don't see me with a steady income. Even though there is money coming in, they can see
Yes.
that. But
Yes.
I was not getting a pay slip,
Yes.
which I think a lot of business people do, just because it just seems like a schlep, you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
do I really need to do that? But yeah, now we're trying to rectify all of those things and pay myself a steady amount every single month,
Yeah.
generate a pay slip,
Yes.
all of those things.
Powerful. That's very important, Gay, right there. I often hear people who are in business lamenting, even people who are in the creative arts, whether they are artists or whether they are soccer players, who say, but we don't get a payslip. But no, you can create your own payslip. If you're invoicing, it's a business. You can create your own payslip because you're building a credit profile. But what I'm also hearing from you, if I'm not mistaken, is that you have your personal bank account and there's a business account.
Correct.
Drawing the line, you know that line, boundaries.
There's no line.
Which one is business? So in other words, yeah. So that was one of the mistakes there.
Big one.
And I think it's quite common with a lot of entrepreneurs getting into business where you can't draw the line between business income and your personal income.
Exactly, yes.
And then you don't realize that you're actually spending more than what you should be spending, and then boom, then you've got a challenge.
Sometimes you're now taking from what's supposed to be your own,
and
you're
then
spending it on this side.
You're involved in other businesses as well, like this apart from. Tell us more about the businesses you're involved with now.
Okay, so at the time, my biggest income was, so first it was the Airbnbs, and then it was the classes, and then it was the Airbnbs again. But now it's the interior design because of the investors.
Right.
We needed the spaces to look good. I had studied, so I said, okay, let's do the design ourselves, and people actually liked them. So I said, okay, let's do this then. Good money in interior design, but I was losing it. Okay, this is another mistake I made. Being too friendly with your staff, being too accessible.
Generous. Father Christmas, Merry Christmas.
So
in January.
What I was doing, I was paying my people, my painter, tiler, what. I was paying them 1,000 rand a day. Okay. I found out the other day that the standard rate for these people is 250 to 300 a day. Now, okay, let's say I was paying them 1,000 rand a day, but they were really good. That would be a different story. But they were making mistakes. And obviously, if the client isn't happy with the workmanship on something, I now need to refund. But I'm refunding
from
after I've paid these people. So
and there's no clawback. No. So you got involved in other business. You in construction now.
Yes.
What do you do in construction?
We do interior design. We remodel houses.
So how does that work? So you, is it residential or are we talking commercial?
Anything.
Okay.
Can be anything.
So what services are you offering there specifically?
Let's say you've got this studio here, right? You guys are tired of this look, you want to remodel. So we'll come in and do the floors, we'll do the electrical work, we'll do the plumbing, we will obviously do the stage, the layout, just changing up everything inside the space. Now, with the business crashing because of the mistakes that were made previously, I've now partnered up with someone that I knew for a while, and he's more on the construction side. So now we can expand. Now we don't have to just come in when the building is already built. We can come in when there's not even a foundation yet. So they start up with that, and then I come in later on and do the design side of things.
Okay, I'm still struggling to reconcile the idea of construction and interior design, because then when you say interior design, I'm thinking the acoustic, the look, and all that. And construction, I'm thinking the structure, the structural issues around.
They're tied very closely linked. So if you now want to buy a house, okay, let's say you have a plot in KZN. You're first going to get the architect and the engineer who are going to come in, and they'll do the concept for you. They'll hand over the drawing. The architect and the engineer then leave. Who then comes in? It's the construction guys, right? But even us as a designer, we do work closely with them, because ultimately we're telling them what floor needs to be put in, which paint is going on the walls, what does the ceiling look like, what is the electrical plan for. So we do work very closely together.
Wow. Was that part of your qualification, or is something else that you're learning on the go?
It is part.
So this interior design is quite big. It's much broader than most of us. I mean, I thought, you just decide.
Cushions
and cushion, then interior design.
So that one is interior decor. So someone actually explained this to me really nicely. Just just side note, I did study both.
Yes.
So interior design is, okay, let's say this is your house, you have a
Right.
house,
Yes.
and you take the roof off.
Yes.
And you turn it upside down and shake it. Ne?
Okay.
All the stuff that falls out is interior decor.
Okay.
Everything that remains,
Hey,
the
hey.
floors, the walls,
Right.
the shower, the bath, all that stuff, that's interior design.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
the difference.
I see now. What is your approach now to cash flow management in a business?
The first thing we did, my assistant is sitting on the other side of the camera,
Yeah.
and she forced me to write down all
Michelle,
of my...
Michelle is quite loyal, I must say. She's stuck by you, you know.
She is.
Ah,
So she forced me to write down all of my debts.
yes.
All of them. And so I wrote them down, and the funny thing is that I was avoiding writing them down because in my head they were this big.
Right.
Then when I wrote them down, they were not even reaching 100,000.
Yeah.
And then we came up with a payment plan. Okay, so for the next couple of projects, we're not going to make profit because we're going to be paying back all of these things. From there, this F&B private wealth,
Yeah.
and apparently it comes with a financial advisor,
Okay.
which I was not using for
Yes,
some odd
yes.
reason. So we found their number and we'll be contacting them
Yeah.
to advise us on what's the best way to
Yes.
to now manage.
You know, a lot of people are not aware that banking is much broader than a savings account. You know, depending on what type of a client you
Yeah,
are. You know,
yeah.
if you're in business, there's a section where they focus on business people. If you're a wealth customer,
Yeah.
they will have this advisor, dedicated consultant who,
Yes.
who will advise you. You can just call them and say, no, I want to buy this, I want to invest in that. They'll move money around for you. So I think it just it gives a different spin to how people see a bank
Yes.
and how partnering with a bank can help them, create wealth and
Exactly.
manage
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still intend to continue with NB? Are you still involved in Airbnb, having lessons learned, and you're still doing? So, are you doing multiple things, or are you focusing on one?
Okay, so I am still involved in Airbnb, but I don't see myself doing it for the long run
Right.
in terms of teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, the having the
mentoring
Airbnbs.
side,
Yeah, I think I think everyone has.
It has
learned
a
now.
season. That thing has a season.
Yeah,
man.
yeah. But in terms of having the Airbnbs, yes, I do.
Yes.
I do, and my goal is actually to now try and get Airbnbs that we actually own, so we don't have to have these problems that we did with the landlords. But that will take a bit of time. But right now, I am more focused on the interior design side of things, which had its own mistakes that now we are really clamping down on. Being nice will kill your business.
Okay.
It will.
Can you talk about the importance of diversifying your income streams? Why is it so important?
Oh, wow. Because anything can happen.
Yeah.
Anything can happen. And at the time, when things started going wrong with the Airbnbs, at least I could fall back on the design side of things. When the design side of things started to deca a little bit, I still had the classes to see me through, even though they weren't that great. I've got income from TikTok as well. So there's always something coming in so that I'm not in the place where I was when my first business failed, when that was my sole source of income. And I was homeless and I was hungry, and when you can't even coop 50 rand to buy bread and maybe some tin fish or something like that. It was bad. Whereas this time, yes, I've fallen again. However, I'm not in the same place that I was. If I compare that fall to this fall, it's very, very different. Where there I was hungry, had no option. Whereas here, yes, I've fallen. Yes, I'm a lot broker than I was before, but I'm not hungry. I'm not starving because there's other small things to just keep me afloat and to be able to at least give me a push to be able to start something up again.
Wow, I love your die-hard attitude. I mean, you can fail there. It doesn't matter how many times you fail, but you just dust yourself and you move on.
The other thing I was saying in another video is that you don't fall. Okay, let's say you start on step number 1.
Right.
You build and maybe you get to number 4.
Yes.
And then you fall. You're going to fall to step number 3.
Yes.
Then you get up again and you go, and then let's say you get to step number 10. You fall again, you fall to step number 4. You're still not falling to step number 1.
Oh.
It's still forward movement, even though it's a little bit back and then you go forward again, a little bit back. Ultimately, you're never going back to square zero, ever.
Yes. So because you have multiple businesses and you've got these multiple streams of income. What financial tools or apps do you use to keep track of your business expenses?
Don't ask me those questions, I'm not.
We want to know. We're learning from you. You're the businesswoman. Surely you must have ways of tracking.
I use Michelle.
Yeah. Okay, so Michelle Hey, that's a nice way out there. Michelle must worry about it. How do you
No.
check businesses? And you already said, Michelle
Yes.
would say, okay, let's
I
break
need
down
X,
your,
Y,
your,
Z.
your, your
Yes.
finances. But I think also what I'm hearing you say with your partnership with Michelle as your manager, is that she's a voice of reason and you're conscious to say, hey, hang on a sec, how about this? And let's talk about the importance of having proper business partners.
Yes.
And no, I'm not talking partners in a form of somebody you're doing business with, but I'm talking about whether it's a lawyer, whether it's an accountant, but
Yes.
actually having business partners
Yes.
that are going to help you achieve your vision.
So I was speaking to the CEO of Google, and I was telling him my story about how everything went
Yeah.
wrong. And he was saying that his advice for me is to find someone who is good at the things that I'm not good at. Because there's no point in me taking on, let's say, the accounting side of things or the administration side of things, when I know that I'm not good at it or it makes me miserable. I like marketing. I like doing the design side of things. But Michelle will be better at something else that I'm not so great at. So he said, even if it's not a business partner per se, because a lot of people don't really like partners because things can happen. Even if you employ someone at a senior level who's going to be responsible for the things that you fail at, that's one thing that's really going to help you to go much further.
Yeah. But more importantly, about talking to the right people. I mean, how many people can say, Bona, I was having coffee with the CEO of just a phone call away.
Just a phone call.
Okay, which leads me to my next question. How do you decide when is the best time to have to move into the next business, the next opportunity, to the next Airbnb? How do you decide this is the right season?
When we saw the others were working out fine, we were able to pay the rentals on them on time. We were able to make a profit from them, and more importantly, we were able to get another investor on board.
Okay.
So that was our indicator as to when to get another one.
Okay. How do you prepare for emergencies, unplanned expenses?
Have a emergency fund or savings. Actually, something happened. I went to one of my previous assistants, and they were making prawns for dinner, and they didn't know that I was allergic to prawns. Now, I didn't eat the prawns because I know I'm allergic. But because they were cooking it, and that the fumes got into my system, I had to be rushed to the hospital. Totally unplanned for, but at the time, I did have an emergency fund, so I was able to pay that. It was a couple of thousands. I don't have medical aid.
Okay.
I think it's a scam, but that's conversation for another day.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I had somebody sitting on the same chair you're sitting on, and they were lamenting about the worst mistake they made by thinking that medical aid, Jan, because then they broke their leg. I think I can mention that's Nicolette Mashile. She broke her leg, and then she went there, they did scans, and then all of a sudden, to get a bed in a private hospital, the scans and everything, it was coming to around 250,000. The question is, can you really put aside 250,000? Put layer emergency for if anything happens to my body. But anyways, that's a conversation for another day. Last question.
Okay.
Can you give me your top 3 tips to young people out there who are venturing into business? What are the things they should look out for when it comes to venturing into business? If they want to thrive, your top 3 tips.
Okay. My tip number 1 is quote or charge correctly. Right. That's a big mistake that I was making. Client says, okay, I've only got this budget, and we like to say, I'll make it work. It will not work. It won't. In the end, you're going to be paying for that project on your own. You're going to be working pro bono, and that's obviously not why you started the business to begin with. So charge your worth, know your worth. And I know even if you're just starting out, research what does an entry-level designer charge for this service or whatever it is, and charge exactly that. There are people with money. They will pay whatever it is. Obviously, I'm not saying that you must overcharge now, but charge your worth. A lot of people are failing there. The second one will be set boundaries with your staff.
Yep.
Put your foot down. And if you don't have that, because maybe some people are just too nice and they struggle to do that, put someone in place who will be able to put their foot down. And if someone makes a mistake, they need to pay for it. In the same way that it happens with big corporates and their staff, they make a mistake, they pay for it from their salary. It's the same way that we need to do it as small business owners as well.
Okay.
And then the last tip would be, don't be afraid to fail. You can't be afraid to fail, because ultimately the fear of failing is what also keeps people down when they have failed, because the failing is inevitable.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
If we look at people who are super successful, if you had spoken to them, they would tell you that they probably failed more times than they can count.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen. But when it does happen, just brush it off, pick yourself up again and try again, because at least you learned something from it. And ultimately, it's not the end of the world.
Wow.
We keep going.
Wow. Anyway, that's Qinisile, aka Lady Q. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having
I really
me.
look forward to us, going live with this podcast, and I think there's a lot. There are a lot of gems, a lot of sources there and there. Really appreciate you having spent time with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.